I keep telling myself it was just condensation, that my eyes were playing tricks, that I was half asleep and paranoid. But I've looked at that photo maybe 300 times now, and I can't make myself believe that anymore. I'm an accountant for context. 28 years old, boring job, boring life. I was driving from Boston to Portland for a client meeting, one of those cross-country hauls where you leave after work on a Thursday to make a Friday morning appointment. I'd planned to get a motel around the halfway point, but I miscalculated the drive time, and by 11 p.m. I was barely keeping my eyes open, still 2 hours from the nearest town. There was this pull-off area on Route 201, one of those gravel semicircles where logging trucks probably take breaks. Trees on 3 sides, road on the other. I figured I'd sleep there for a few hours, wake up at dawn, finish the drive. My car's a hatchback, and I'd brought a sleeping bag for exactly this kind of situation. I cracked the windows maybe half an inch for air, locked all the doors, set my phone alarm for 5 a.m., and passed out in the reclined driver's seat. The breathing woke me up. I don't know what time it was. Still full dark outside. And this sound, this steady, heavy breathing, right next to my left ear. Just the driver's side window between me and whatever was making it. Deep, wet inhales and exhales, rhythmic, patient. I didn't move. I mean, I couldn't move, not at first. You know that feeling when you wake up and your body hasn't caught up with your brain yet? Like that, except my brain was screaming at me that something was very wrong. The breathing continued. In, out, in, out. I could hear moisture in it like when someone has a chest cold, and it was close, maybe 6 inches from the glass. I thought bear. Had to be a bear, right? But I'd cracked those windows and I couldn't smell anything. No animal musk, no garbage breath, nothing. Just that sound. My phone was in the cup holder. I moved my hand toward it so slowly, centimeter by centimeter, trying not to make the sleeping bag rustle. The breathing didn't change, didn't pause. Whoever or whatever was out there wasn't reacting to me at all. I got my fingers around the phone. The screen lit up when I touched it way too bright, and I angled it away from the window immediately. 2:37 a.m. No service, but the camera still worked. Here's the thing. I wasn't thinking clearly. I should have started the engine, turned on the headlights, laid on the horn. Instead, some animal part of my brain decided I needed to see what was out there. Needed to know. I opened the camera app. The screen showed just darkness and the faint reflection of my own face, pale and wide-eyed. I raised the phone toward the window, my hand shaking so badly I almost dropped it. The breathing continued, steady, close. I took the picture. The flash was blinding in the darkness, a white explosion that left me seeing spots. And in that split second of illumination, I saw nothing. Just wet glass, condensation running down in thick streaks. No animal, no person, nothing. But the breathing stopped. For maybe 3 seconds, there was total silence. I sat there blinking away the afterimage, my thumb hovering over the screen, and then I heard it. Laughing. Not a human laugh. I mean, it came from a human throat, I think, but it was wet and broken and wrong, like someone choking and laughing at the same time. It started right where the breathing had been, right outside my window, and then it started moving. Around the front of the car, passenger side, back around, circling. That's when I started the engine. I don't remember turning the key, don't remember shifting into drive. I just remember gravel spraying and my headlights swinging across empty trees, and then I was back on the road doing 70 in a 45 zone, and the laughing was gone. I didn't stop again until I hit a 24-hour gas station 40 minutes later. Fluorescent lights, security cameras, a tired clerk behind plexiglass. I sat in the parking lot until the shaking stopped enough for me to walk inside and buy coffee I didn't drink. I looked at the photo in that parking lot, just a picture of condensation on glass, streaky and wet, exactly what I'd seen in the flash. I almost deleted it, almost convinced myself I'd dreamed the whole thing, that I'd woken myself up with my own heavy breathing, that exhaustion and darkness and an overactive imagination had created something from nothing. But I didn't delete it. Something made me keep it. I made my meeting the next morning, drove home that weekend, went back to work, back to my regular life, tried not to think about it. 3 days later, I was showing my girlfriend photos from the trip, just landscape shots I'd taken. Nothing interesting. When I scrolled past that picture from the pull-off, she asked what it was. I told her I'd accidentally taken it in my sleep, that it was nothing. She zoomed in. She asked why there was a handprint on my window. I took the phone back from her, zoomed in myself, and there it was, in the condensation, so faint I'd missed it the first dozen times I'd looked. A print from a palm and 4 fingers pressed against the glass from the outside. The streaks of moisture ran around it, like water running around an obstacle. I held my own hand up to the screen. My fingers didn't even come close. This print was maybe 50% larger than mine. And the angle was wrong too. The fingers pointed down, like whoever made it had been crouching or bent over, their hand placed deliberately on the glass while they leaned in close, while they breathed. My girlfriend asked if I'd stopped somewhere and someone had messed with my car. I said yes. Told her some kids at a rest stop must have been fucking around. She accepted that. I don't know why I lied. I've tried to convince myself there's another explanation. That the print was already there and I just didn't notice. That it's a smudge or a defect in the photo that coincidentally looks like a hand. That my memory of that night is exaggerated by fear and sleeplessness. I take different routes now when I travel. I don't stop in pull-offs anymore, don't care how tired I am. And I keep my windows up at night, even when it's hot. I'm a freelance web designer. I spend most of my time indoors staring at screens, so I'm not exactly the outdoorsy type. The camping trip was purely practical. A gear company offered me $300 to test their new ultralight setup and write honest reviews. 1 night in the woods, some photos, done. Easy money for someone who works in pajamas most days. I picked a spot off Highway 16 about 2 hours from home. Popular enough that the trailhead had a decent parking area, remote enough that I'd have the trail mostly to myself on a Wednesday night. The plan was simple: hike in 2 miles, set up camp, test the gear, hike out in the morning. Everything went fine at first. The tent went up easier than expected. The sleeping bag was actually pretty comfortable. I made dinner on their little camp stove, took my product photos while there was still light, then settled in as the sun dropped behind the ridge. By 9, it was properly dark, that thick kind of darkness you don't get near cities. I was lying in the tent making notes on my phone when I heard it. 3 taps. Distinct, evenly spaced. Almost metallic sounding. I stopped typing and listened. Nothing but wind in the trees for maybe 30 seconds. Then again, tap, tap, tap. Same rhythm, same spacing. It was coming from somewhere down in the ravine to the east, maybe 200 yards away. There's no trail down there, just steep slopes and dense brush. My first thought was another camper in trouble. The 3-tap thing, it seemed deliberate, like a signal. I unzipped the tent and stood outside, listening. The temperature had dropped hard and my breath came out in clouds. Tap, tap, tap. Definitely from the ravine. I called out, asked if someone needed help. My voice sounded small out there. No response except the wind. And then maybe a minute later, the tapping again. Here's the thing. I almost didn't go check. Part of me wanted to zip the tent back up and ignore it. But the idea of someone actually hurt down there, waiting for help while I did nothing, I couldn't sit with that. So I grabbed my headlamp and started toward the sound. The terrain dropped off sharply about 50 feet from my campsite. I had to use trees to keep from sliding as I worked my way down. The headlamp beam kept catching on branches, creating these jumping shadows that made everything look like it was moving. I stopped every few yards to listen, trying to track where the tapping was coming from. Tap, tap, tap. Closer now, maybe 70, 80 feet ahead. I called out again, said I was coming to help. Still no voice, no response. Just that same measured tapping after another minute passed. The brush got thicker as I descended. I had to push through tangles of undergrowth, and something about it started feeling wrong. The spacing of those taps, it was too precise, too patient. Not like someone frantically signaling for help, more like someone just waiting. I reached what I thought was the source. A small clearing in the ravine, maybe 15 feet across, ringed by dense brush and a few larger trees. I swept my headlamp around the space. Nothing. No person, no camping gear, no explanation for the sound. I stood there, breathing hard from the climb down, and listened. Silence. Complete silence. Even the wind had stopped. Then behind me, tap, tap, tap. I spun around, and the headlamp caught nothing but trees and brush. But the sound was close now, maybe 10 feet away, right where I'd just come from. That's when my hands started shaking. Not because of what I saw, but because of what I didn't see. There was nothing there. No rocks, no branches, nothing that could make that sound. But I'd heard it clearly, right behind me. I was trying to make sense of it, trying to convince myself it was an echo or some weird acoustic trick, when I heard something else. A heavy, dragging sound moving slowly through the brush to my left. Not an animal walking. This was something being pulled, methodical, deliberate. And the weight of it, God, the sound it made pushing through the undergrowth, it was substantial. I don't know why this detail matters, but it stuck with me. The dragging sound had a rhythm to it. A pull, a pause, another pull. Like someone with a lot of weight to move, taking their time. I didn't wait to see what it was. I went back up that slope faster than I came down, not caring about the noise I made, not caring that branches were tearing at my jacket and face. I just needed to be away from that clearing. When I got back to my campsite, I didn't go in the tent. I stood outside, headlamp off, trying to slow my breathing enough to listen. The dragging sound had stopped. Everything was quiet again. That's when it hit me. The tapping wasn't a distress call. It was a signal, yeah, but not for me. I'd interrupted something. The first taps had been down in the ravine, drawing me in. Then when I got close, they started behind me, like whatever made them had repositioned. And that dragging sound only started after I'd reached the clearing. I packed up in the dark. Took me maybe 15 minutes to stuff everything into my pack, and I didn't care about being quiet or organized. I just needed to be moving. The hike back to my car was 2 miles of me trying not to run, trying not to imagine what I'd hear if I stopped. I made it to the parking lot around 11:30. There was one other vehicle there, a dark pickup I hadn't noticed when I'd arrived. It hadn't been there that afternoon. I'm sure of it. I sat in my car for a while before starting the engine, watching that truck in my rearview mirror. No lights, no movement, just sitting there. I never wrote those product reviews. Sent the gear back and told the company something came up. They were understanding about it. 3 weeks later, I was scrolling through local news and saw a story about human remains found off Highway 16, about 3 miles from where I'd camped. Partial remains, they said. Evidence of, I don't know, the article didn't specify, They were asking anyone who'd been in the area to come forward with information. I haven't called. I don't know what I'd even say. That I heard tapping and something being dragged, that proves nothing. But I keep thinking about that pickup truck sitting alone in the parking lot at midnight. And I keep hearing that dragging sound, the weight of it, the rhythm. Sometimes at night I wonder if the tapping was happening before I heard it, if I only noticed once they wanted me to notice, and what would have been in that clearing if I'd arrived 5 minutes earlier. I'm a construction foreman, 38 years old. Pretty grounded guy, honestly. The camping trip was supposed to be me, Sarah, and the kids. 3 nights at Holloway Creek, a state park 2 hours north. We'd had it booked for months, and I'd already used the vacation days. Then Sarah's mom fell and broke her hip, and suddenly it was all hospital visits and child care shuffling. Sarah told me to go anyway, get some peace and quiet, decompress a little. I almost didn't. Should have listened to that impulse. I got there Thursday afternoon. The campground was maybe a quarter full, mostly RVs and trailers clustered near the bathrooms. I picked a spot farther out, closer to the trailhead. Tent camping, the way I prefer it. Set everything up before dark. 2-person tent, sleeping bag, cooler with beer and sandwich stuff. Standard setup I'd done 100 times. The first night was fine. Heard some animals moving around, branches snapping in the distance, normal wood sounds. Slept pretty well, actually. It was the second night when I heard the cooler. I woke up to this soft clicking sound, the latch on my cooler being carefully, slowly lifted and released. Click, pause, click, like someone testing how it worked. The cooler was maybe 6 feet from my tent next to the fire ring where I'd left it. I lay there listening, trying to make sense of it. Raccoons, probably. They're smart as hell, can figure out latches sometimes. I unzipped the tent flap part way and shined my flashlight out there. The cooler sat exactly where I'd left it, latch closed. I swept the beam around the campsite. Nothing. Trees, shadows, empty space. I got up and checked the cooler anyway. Everything inside was exactly as I'd packed it. The ice hadn't even shifted around. If an animal had been pawing at it, there should have been marks, scratches, something. The plastic was clean. I went back to bed telling myself I'd been half asleep, maybe dreamed it, but I didn't sleep much after that. The next morning I walked around the campsite in daylight looking for tracks. The ground was pretty hard-packed, not great for prints, but I found a few scuff marks near the cooler that could have been anything. Boot prints, animal tracks, my own feet from the night before. Nothing definitive. I considered packing up. I really did. But it was my last day, and in the sunlight the whole thing seemed stupid. Something had messed with my cooler, probably a raccoon, and I'd spooked myself, that's all. I spent the day hiking, saw maybe 3 other people on the trails, got back to camp around 5, made dinner, had a couple of beers, watched the fire burn down. The park was quiet that night, no sounds from the other campsites, no kids yelling or music playing, just me and the trees and the early October dark pressing in. I turned in around 10, lay there reading on my phone until the battery got low, then switched it off to save power. For a while I just listened. Wind in the branches. Some bird I couldn't identify making a low rhythmic call. Then the tent moved. Not like wind, not like something bumping into it by accident. A deliberate touch, a slow stroke along the outer wall about 2 feet from my head. The nylon bent inward slightly under the pressure, then released. It happened again lower down, near the floor, the same gentle, exploratory pressure, like fingers dragging across fabric. I didn't move. Couldn't. My whole body locked up. I wanted to yell, to make noise, to scare off whatever it was, but my throat closed and nothing came out. The touching stopped. I waited, breathing through my nose, trying to stay absolutely still. Minutes passed. My legs started cramping from holding the same position. Then I heard footsteps, except they didn't sound quite right. Too soft, maybe, or the rhythm was off. They circled my tent slowly, clockwise, stopping every few feet. At each stop, that same light touch on the tent wall. Stroke. Pause. Stroke. Working their way around. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't I look? Why didn't I turn on my flashlight and confront it? Here's the thing. Some part of me understood that seeing would be worse. That whatever was out there wasn't an animal, wasn't a confused hiker, wasn't anything I had a framework for understanding. And if I confirmed that, if I actually saw, I couldn't unknow it. The circuit around my tent took maybe 3 minutes. Then the footsteps stopped at the front, right by the zippered entrance. I could hear breathing, not panting, not the heavy snorts of a bear or the quick respirations of a raccoon. Slow, measured breathing, human breathing. I waited for the zipper to move, for hands to tear through the nylon, for something to force its way inside. Instead, there was this sound. God, I still hear it sometimes when I'm trying to fall asleep. A wet, sighing exhale right against the tent fabric, long and slow and full of what I can only describe as wanting. Frustrated wanting. The kind of sound someone makes when they're looking at something they can't have, not yet. It stayed there. I counted my own heartbeats, lost track around 200. My legs were shaking. I had to piss so badly it hurt, but I couldn't move, couldn't make a sound. Eventually, I don't know how long, maybe 20 minutes, maybe an hour, the presence withdrew. I heard those wrong-sounding footsteps moving away into the trees, waited until I couldn't hear them anymore, waited longer. When I finally moved, my muscles were so stiff I could barely sit up. I turned on my flashlight with shaking hands and checked my phone. 3:17 in the morning. I didn't unzip the tent, didn't look outside, just sat there with the flashlight on, draining the batteries until the sky started going gray. I packed up at first light and drove home. Didn't stop to return the site key, didn't use the bathroom, just threw everything in my truck and left. Sarah asked why I was back early. I told her I hadn't been feeling well, stomach bug or something. She believed me. I looked like hell, apparently. I returned to work the following Monday. Told the guys the camping trip was fine, relaxing, exactly what I needed. They believed me too, but I keep thinking about that sound, that sigh, the patience in it. Like whatever was out there knew I'd be back eventually, or that it could find me if it wanted to. I changed my number last week. I know that doesn't make sense, that whatever was in those woods doesn't have my contact information, but I did it anyway. I haven't been able to use my tent since then. It's still in my truck, stuffed in its bag. Sometimes when I'm loading equipment, I see it there, and my hands start shaking. Sarah keeps asking when we're going to plan another family camping trip. I don't know how to tell her we're never going camping again. I'm only telling this because my roommate noticed I haven't been the same since spring break, and he won't drop it until I explain. I'm a pretty level-headed guy for context. Engineering major. I build things. I trust what I can measure and prove. So finals week was crushing me last April, and I needed to clear my head before my thermodynamics exam. There's this campground about 2 hours north, nothing fancy. Just a decent spot with fire pits and pit toilets that gets packed on weekends but stays empty midweek. I threw my tent and sleeping bag in my Civic and drove up on a Tuesday afternoon, planning to study a little, sleep a lot, and reset my brain. The place was completely deserted when I pulled in. I mean, 0 cars in the lot, no ranger at the station, just me and maybe 15 empty campsites spreading out into the pines. I picked one at the end of the loop, backed my car in, and started setting up. The weather was perfect, that early spring cold that's sharp but not miserable, and the quiet felt like exactly what I needed. I noticed the thing in the fire pit when I was gathering wood. It was sitting upright in the center of the pit, propped between 2 half-burnt logs like someone had placed it there deliberately. A mannequin head, the kind you'd see in a department store window, except its face was completely smooth. Not blank like it was unpainted, smooth like it had melted. The features were gone, just gentle depressions where eyes and a mouth should have been, the whole surface waxy and uniform. No hair, no seams, just this featureless oval the color of old plastic. I figured some kids had been screwing around, maybe tried to burn it and it got too weird so they bailed. I didn't want to look at it while I ate dinner, so I grabbed a stick and knocked it out of the pit. The thing was lighter than I expected, hollow sounding when it hit the gravel. I carried it to the dumpster near the parking lot and tossed it in with the rest of the trash. That night I studied until my headlamp died, then crashed around 11. Slept better than I had in weeks. The next morning I woke up around 7 and unzipped my tent to find another one sitting on the stump I'd been using as a table. Same size, same color, same melted smooth face. I stood there in my sleeping bag staring at it, trying to logic it out. Maybe there'd been 2 of them and I'd only noticed one. But I'd walked past that stump a dozen times the day before. I would have seen it. I picked it up and turned it over. Completely seamless, no markings, just that disturbing smoothness where a face should be. The depressions for the eyes were shallow enough that depending on the angle, it almost looked like it was watching you, almost. I walked it to the dumpster again, this time making sure to bury it under a torn garbage bag, and spent the rest of the morning telling myself it was a coincidence. Someone had dumped a bunch of these things and they were scattered around the campground. Totally reasonable. I tried to study, kept reading the same paragraph about entropy over and over while my eyes drifted to the tree line. Around 3, I drove into town for supplies, partly because I needed food and partly because I wanted to be around people. I stayed at a diner for 2 hours, nursing coffee and watching normal families eat normal meals. When I got back to the campsite just before dark, I did a full walk around before I got out of the car. Everything looked fine. I made dinner, studied until my eyes hurt, then retreated to my tent around 10. I woke up sometime after midnight because my tent was glowing. Not bright, just enough light that I could see the outline of my backpack, my boots, the shape of the tent walls. My headlamp was off. I'd made sure of that before I fell asleep. Then I realized the light was coming from outside, like someone was pointing a flashlight at my tent from a few feet away. I didn't move, just lay there trying to hear footsteps or breathing or anything that would tell me who was out there. The light shifted slightly. I watched the shadow on the tent wall change angle. My phone was in my jacket pocket within reach. I grabbed it slowly, ready to call 911 or take a photo or something, but the second my fingers touched it, the light cut out completely. The darkness was so sudden and total I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. I waited maybe 5 minutes, barely breathing, then turned on my phone's flashlight and unzipped the tent. Nothing. No footprints in the dirt around my tent, no tire tracks, no sign anyone had been there. But sitting on the hood of my car, directly in front of my tent's entrance, was another head. This time I didn't touch it. I got back in the tent, zipped it completely shut, and sat there until sunrise with my keys in my hand. When the light came back, I packed up everything in maybe 10 minutes flat. I was shoving my sleeping bag into my trunk when I glanced at the head still sitting on my hood. In the morning light, I could see something I'd missed in the dark. The depressions where its eyes should be were angled down slightly, like it was looking at where the tent had been. I used my jacket sleeve to knock it off the hood, got in the car, and drove straight to the ranger station at the campground entrance. It was still locked up, no ranger in sight, but there was a bulletin board with a phone number. I called it, voicemail. I left a rambling message about harassment and trespassing and illegal dumping, then got back on the highway. I made it maybe 15 miles before I had to pull over. My hands wouldn't stop shaking enough to steer properly. I sat in a gas station parking lot for 20 minutes drinking water and trying to breathe normal. That's when I checked my back seat. 3 of them, arranged in a row on the seat, their blank faces all angled forward like passengers. I hadn't opened my back doors since I'd arrived at the campground. I'd packed my gear in the trunk. The doors had been locked all night. I don't remember getting out of the car. I just remember standing in the gas station parking lot in the middle of the day, staring through the window at those 3 smooth faces, and understanding on some level that couldn't be rationalized that something had been watching me the entire time. Something that could move without sound, that knew where I was, that wanted me to know it was there. The attendant came out and asked if I was okay. I told him I needed help getting something out of my car. When we walked back over, the back seat was empty. I still have my tent, my camping gear, all of it stuffed in my closet. I can't make myself throw it away, but I can't touch it either. My roommate thinks I had some kind of breakdown from exam stress. Last week I was walking to class and saw someone across the quad wearing one of those cheap mask things from a costume shop, completely blank and white. I had to sit down on the nearest bench and wait for them to walk away. They never turned in my direction, but I swear the mask tilted slightly, just enough that I couldn't tell if they were looking at me. I still don't go into parking lots alone after dark.